Hi everyone, welcome to ConnectCon, presented by FTC Team 9794, Wizards.exe. Join us this week on our magical journey each day from 10 to 11 a.m. and 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, where you can hear from STEM professionals from Google, APL, iRobot, and more. I'm Arjun, and I'll be your host for this session. Please use the chat for any questions related to the presentation, and we'll address them at the end. Today, we have the privilege of meeting with 5 iRobot employees, and in fact, 4 of them are FIRST alumni, and all of them have been involved with FIRST. We have Mr. Mike Mullinax from Customer Care Operations, Mr. Zakaria Dino, a test engineer, Mr. Andy Reichel in Data Science, Dr. Laura Herlant, a roboticist, and Mr. Matt Nichols from Operations. Thank you for taking the time to present at ConnectCon. I'm looking forward to hearing about their career paths and the exciting ways they work together to create practical robots. Thank you.
All right. Awesome. So, yeah, thanks, Arjun. So, as you said, we all work for iRobot, and we pride ourselves on being the consumer robot company. And definitely, according to market share and everything like that, we have the most robots out across everybody's homes across the world. And so we've been doing that for 30 years of time. So just a little bit of history and kind of about us. So founded in 1990, and you can see the list there. We've got offices all across the world, and we've grown quite a bit, especially over the past 10 years or so, 5 to 10 years. We're now up over 1,200 employees, and we've grown to, you can see there in 2019, we sold $1.2 billion in robots. And we're actually traded on stock exchange, so iRBT. Some of our history, so iRobot, 30 years long history, and actually the Roomba and some of the other consumer robots that you see today really didn't come into play until later in iRobot's history, and certainly didn't become a major part of, or the part of iRobot until really like the 2010 kind of time range. So iRobot started off as really kind of an R&D house for the government, and we did all kinds of small projects for them. We launched or did a bunch of projects to try to send robots to the moon. And then we had a huge business in the 2000s for the defense industry, and we made robots that got sold to either law enforcement agencies or Army, Marine Corps, so that they could use a robot to get into a dangerous situation rather than sending a person in. And then actually in 2002 was when the first Roomba came out. But as I said, I mean, it really was a kind of a niche product in 2002. And it really, you started to really see Roomba take off around this like 2011 time frame, right? That's where Roomba really started to explode. And around the same time, we had another product, which is actually really cool, called Ava, which is a telepresence robot that would move around either your business or store, your home, automated, and it would allow you to basically teleport in and kind of have a remote presence, but in the form factor, I mean, it was as tall as a human. So your face would be sitting there and you'd be rolling around to wherever you wanted to see. And actually, I wonder in the current times with coronavirus and everything and everybody in quarantine, that would really be pretty useful. But we ended up divesting that business. And then we also divested the defense robots. I don't know the exact years, but right around there, 2012, 13, somewhere in there, we got rid of those two businesses and decided to focus only on consumer robots. So Roomba, Brava is the other one. This is, and we'll talk about these a little bit more in detail, but in 2016, 2012, we launched the Brava, which is the mopping robot. We saw that was where all the growth was. And so we decided as a company to focus all on that. And then you can see in the later years, a couple of our more modern robots, the 980, the E5 and the i7, and then S9 and M6. So that's some of our background. Here's our leadership team. All good looking, smart engineer types. And our mission statement is empower people to do more, right? So by providing all these robots to help with kind of mundane tasks around the house, it frees you up to go, do things with your family or do things that you love to do rather than cleaning the house, right? And here's our latest one, the S9. And the S9 is unique. It was our first robot to come out with clean base, which is a really cool feature. If anybody has a Roomba in their house, you know that one of the most, honestly, I still think it's magical, but every time it returns to home base to charge and makes that cool little dun-dun sound, that we added. So with S9 Plus, we introduced this clean base, which also has the added feature to actually empty the robot. So you can go months on time without even touching it. That's kind of our goal, right? Is that the robot will return to home, empty itself, and then it'll go back out for its next scheduled mission, and you don't have to touch it. You just get a clean house. Here's a picture. This is the M6, which is our mop, and that's unique because it has actually got a reservoir on it where you put water and cleaning solution, and then it obviously, as you can see in the picture, sprays and then goes over and mops your floor. This one is unique. This is our latest one, the Bravo Jet, the M6, because it has systemic navigation. So you can see we do have a camera on this one as well, just like the S9 and the i7, some of our other vacuums. And so the camera really just helps it to navigate around your home and know exactly where it is. So our goal, right, is that we want to be, we're working on all these different technologies so that we can help automate your home and really create an ecosystem of robots to make your smart home better, right? Because iRobot has, we've got the unique capability where we know where things are in your house, right? And so if you think about Alexas or Nest thermostats or anything like that, none of those things move around. So we're really one of the only, if not the only, smart device that is moving around and knows where it is within your home. The other thing that we do is called teaming. And so all of our connected robots are connected through the cloud and then into your app as well. But so that enables them all to talk together, right? So for example, with the, you can see here, this is the S9 and the M6. A lot of folks may have a routine set up where the S9, everybody knows that you don't go mop your floor without sweeping it, right? So what we have the S9 performing that sweeping function, right, where it goes through and vacuums up, say your kitchen, your hardwood floors or whatever, and then it completes its mission, and then it will then tell the M6 to also go out and do its job, right? And again, they all know exactly where they are. So you could have your home base in your dining room and then tell it to go clean the kitchen, and it all can just go out there and just do it. Just works, right? So this kind of shows our whole product line. So we talked a lot about the S9 and the M6. Those are our kind of high-end robots right now, but it also moves down the line. And, we've got, kind of our strategy is to introduce all the top end features at the top line, and then we filter down over time, right? And so this is just showing some of those features and how they filter down. And overall, we're very proud to say 30 million robots sold. And that's a lot of robots over the years. And so, STEM, one of the great programs that iRobot has is really what, we're doing today is to go out and help to hopefully inspire the next round of great engineers and roboticists that will help to make a company like iRobot to be able to sustain into the future and keep making an impact and making more cool stuff and more cool robots, right?
Before you move on from this slide, Matt, I think a really cool thing that the company does for all of us is it actually gives us two, what are essentially, we call them STEM days, where we are given time to, spend away from our work to actually go out into our communities and talk to classrooms, like we are here, and when we can do it in person, bring robots into a classroom and talk about our role in, STEM and how we got here, but actually bring that robot into the classroom and share it with everybody. So it's a really cool benefit that the company gives us to really give back to the STEM community and not just say that we care and we want to build for ourselves. We really want to get out there and inspire the next generation of STEM folks, whether they come to work for iRobot or not. But we just want that message to get out there.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Mike. All right. Yeah. So mission-driven builders. So iRobot, I'll give I guess it's a little backwards, but I'll kind of give my intro a little bit later on. But I've been at iRobot for 4 years, and I think one of the great things that we do as a company is have fun, right? Like in a lot of ways, it's similar. Like we have a similar culture, similar environment to what I remember from my first days, right? Is that everybody's there because they think the technology is cool and they like to work on cutting edge technology and cool stuff. Honestly, everything that we build and do every day it is just fun. And so iRobot kind of fosters that, and that's a strength of ours. So with that, I think we will flip over to everybody. So Laura, do you want to
Yeah,
go ahead?
sure. So I'll just introduce myself and give you a little description on how I made my way to iRobot. So I was always interested in math and science when I was in high school, and I really didn't think about robotics until I joined the FRC team. So I did this for 3 years during high school, and it completely changed my mind on what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go into just sort of generic science. I really wanted to do engineering and build robots. And at the time, I was choosing my major for college, and I grew up close to Virginia Tech, which has an engineering department, had a robotics lab. I went there and I asked the people who are working on robots, I said, all right, what should I major in if I want to do what you're doing? And the response I got was basically, doesn't much matter. Pick some engineering, pick something that's interesting, like to you, that's relevant to robotics, whether it's mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computer science. Any of these majors will lead you or can lead you to a robotics career track. So I ended up going to computer engineering because the thing I liked most about working on the FRC team was the programming part. So I learned a lot of programming languages, eventually leading me to do my PhD at Carnegie Mellon, because at the time I knew I wanted to do a PhD in robotics because I was really interested in doing research. And there were only 3 robotics programs at that time in the country, at least in the US. And so I had sort of limited choices on where to go because I knew I wanted to stay in robotics. So I ended up going to Carnegie Mellon, working in the personal robotics lab. And there was really a switch from mechanical aspects to very much programming, like computer science. I shifted a little bit away from building robots, but more into programming, like the intelligence side of robots. And so this led really well into what I'm doing now at iRobot. So these switch slides. I'm on the machine learning group at iRobot, and this is something that we haven't advertised too much yet, but iRobot does a lot of work on artificial intelligence and machine learning on trying to make our robots smarter and more well adapted to particular people's homes. So there's lots of different types of machine learning. You'll see this also outside of machine learning, but also in data science. So it's just sort of different spectrums where you are in this spectrum here. So supervised learning does a lot of figuring out like what things are in images, or predicting if an event is going to happen or not. Unsupervised learning is about figuring out the structure, hidden structure in the data. So a lot of data scientists are working on this. And then there's kind of a new field, which is reinforcement learning, where you're trying to learn behaviors. So that's, I do a lot of work along the whole spectrum, but most of what I do is sort of on this last piece of the puzzle. And so it's really all about working with a team. I work with a team that on reinforcement learning, there's a team for around each of these. And one of the things that I thought when I got into robotics was that I was going to build a robot, right? I'm going to come up with the design, I'm going to manufacture it, build the parts, program it, like all the way end to end. But you discover very quickly that robots are really complicated, and you need to know the details of each different part if you're going to do that. And so it's really about working with my teammates, and I can deliver one part, but other people are going to deliver other parts, and they all come together to make a robot. And so that's been really the biggest thing I've gotten out of this process so far, is learning how to work with others and plan with others around delivering like a really complicated but successful robot. Next.
Cool. Yeah, that's a really awesome explanation, Laura. I'm going to share a quick kind of background on what I do at iRobot. I'm Andy. What I've done at iRobot, and a little bit more about where how we do things. So to start off, my introduction started with first in 2014. I was a team mentor of Team 2813 down in San Jose area. This was mind-blowing for me. So I was super excited to add first to my list of robotics experience as a mentor. But before that, even like Laura said, when I was going through college, I was really undecided as to what I wanted to study. So I wound up choosing mechanical engineering because of some CAD classes I had taken my senior year of high school, and knew I wanted to stay in kind of what would be the more hands-on domain where I could see the parts, shape the parts, and it was the most relatable to me in my experience at the time. And then fast forward, I guess, 4 or 5 years into working as a mechanical engineer, I went back to do my master's work in robotics engineering and wound up switching exclusively to data science and applied statistics for my master's program, and am now a data scientist after having spent 6 years in hardware development. So I can totally attest to both sides of both hardware and software development spectrum, and can say that they both play very integral parts to the whole robotics environment. But on the slide here on the right, a few little examples of how we develop robots at iRobot. The top picture is an early 2 prototypes of the S9 platform. So this was back in 2014, 2015, where we really began to look at this architecture. So a really good example of how we start from really the ground up on a lot of our platforms and a lot of our robots, from 3D printed parts and harvesting parts from existing robots, all the way down to that middle picture where we have Scott riding on one of our development robots. And it's really the passion about robots and developing robotic technology at iRobot is paralleled really by none. And I think these pictures show a really good example of that passion that everyone has, and their development, or their desire to produce the best products possible. And the bottom right picture is a picture of myself, Scott, and another mechanical engineer working in China. where a lot of the designs come to fruition. And I think we'll talk more about that in some of Matt's slides.
Thanks, Andy. So I'm Mike. I've been with iRobot for about 5 years now. I started in FRC back in 2003 as a student, and I kind of never lost the robotics bug from then on. You know, I didn't know how to get involved in that, and my path kind of took more of a winding route to get here. I originally studied mechanical engineering in school, so I still apply that in my personal life, where I build combat robots. So I compete with you know, various different weight classes for that. But in my professional life, I work on our customer care team, and I work with a lot of our data that we get from customers that are calling in and reporting issues or giving feedback, and then presenting that to our engineerings and our quality teams as we're designing new product. And, you know, as we launch a new product, to get that feedback from our users directly back into the product to help improve the product and make sure that every robot that we release is better than the last one, and, you know, really meets the needs of our customer. And, you know, as far as you know, how I ended up with iRobot is I actually, you know, after school ended up going down more of the IT route. So I worked for, you know, a couple of different places as an admin, and then I worked for Apple for a little while. And after I left Apple, I came to iRobot, working on our customer care team, working with the launch of iRobot's first connected product, and really bringing some of that IT knowledge into a space that we didn't have it before, where, you know, previously all of our robots had been something that you walked over to and pressed the button. It wasn't connected to the app. We didn't have an iRobot app. But in 2015, when we launched the 980, we had this whole different world open up. So that was where I came into the iRobot team, is, you know, helping our call centers and our, you know, support teams be able to support a robot that is essentially now a computer on wheels that drives around your home, that also happens to clean. You know, the thing that I love about my position is I get to work with pretty much every group in the company, whether it's engineering, data science, operations, quality, the R&D, the software teams. I get to interact with a lot of different people and see a lot of the business, and it's just a really great collaborative place to be.
Oh, that's slightly messy. That's fine. My name is Zac, and thank you, Mike, for handing it off to me. So what I do at iRobot is I break robots, which seems counterintuitive, but a lot of the engineering process is seeing where your limitations are and how the product actually reacts under certain conditions. So I specialize in automating a lot of tests, and these choppy GIFs are a little bit of a representation of that. So I will program a industrial arm to go through and do a bunch of repetitive motion tests as one aspect of my job, to try to test the limits and see where things start breaking down, so that I can then bring that data back to our mechanical engineers, so that they can say, well, we don't want it to break down after it hits the wall once. That doesn't make a good product. So maybe we'll beef this up, you know, a little bit right here, or something of that nature. So I got into doing this by originally kind of falling in love with robots and engineering in FIRST. Back in 2007, I was on Team 809 and then Team 571 in Central Connecticut. And I had a fantastic time doing those all the different games in FRC, and really learning a lot about what goes into making a product. As I'm sure all of you guys are aware, the trials and tribulations that are required to actually build a functioning robot. And then after that, I decided that I would go to school for engineering. And after bouncing around a little bit between which type of engineering, I settled on robotics and mechatronics engineering. And then my focus started as industrial, which is part of where what I'm doing now comes from. So I am programming an industrial arm to beat up other robots so that we don't have to have an employee hit a robot a million times or something of that nature. But I'm trying to broaden my focus now to encompass some software, a little more mechanical, a little more systems engineering, just to be a little more well-rounded. I think that's it. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Zach. So, yeah, I guess maybe doing this a little bit backwards, but my name is Matt, and I am actually in our operations and supply chain group at iRobot. And I guess before I talk work, I was also involved in FIRST in high school, which unfortunately is a long time ago now. I was on Team 40, which was Trinity High School up in Manchester, New Hampshire. Tons of great memories there. And I just always remember and I think this is what still keeps me motivated today, but I was just always in awe of what we were able to do, right? Using the technology and the tools that we had available to us. And then you bring together a whole bunch of people and you have a good team. It's just crazy that we could do that. And in high school, it was maybe even more because, who knew that you could make a robot that then went and, I don't know, when I did it, we had to hang off of a bar and all kinds of crazy stuff, but really cool. So, I am an ME. I went to WPI for mechanical engineering, and right out of school, I worked for Gillette, the razor blade company, and I was worked on their in their manufacturing operation in Boston. And again, really neat. The speed that those razors are made is an unbelievable thing. And so then I came to iRobot, doing also, again, operations and supply chain. So that's where we really, this is where all of the designs and all the work that we put in at our HQ in Bedford really comes to life for iRobot. It's in the Far East in either China or Malaysia is where all of our robots are made. So just an idea, in supply chain, we've got a team of 97 folks. And again, 50% of those people are in either China or Malaysia. Last year, we made over 5 million robots. That's anywhere between 15,000 and 20,000 a day. And if you think of the number of parts that it takes to make a Roomba, I think it's up over 1,200 or 1,400. And then putting that and then making 15,000 of those a day, you're just talking crazy numbers, right? We've got 3 different factories that make all those robots, and this is another staggering number, but that means that in the Far East, in Asia, we have over 5,000 employees on any given day that are working on building robots. So really cool stuff. And then just a couple pictures. So just to show a little bit of the scale, that's a huge rack of printed circuit boards that are going into or that will go into a robot. That's a picture of the surface mount line that actually makes or assembles the circuit boards. Over here, that's a picture of a whole row of plastic injection molding machines, and another row of that. And then here's a picture similar to what Zach was just sharing. Our factories are very highly automated now. And so there's a term that we use at iRobot that's kind of catchy. That's robots making robots. And so there's a picture, which you can see where we've got a completely automated operation for assembling. In this case, it's a Roomba. And then this is just some, again, like I feel like I've used the word a lot, but some cool pictures, or like this is again one of those moments for me personally when it was really exciting to work at iRobot. This is a picture of one of the tools that we use, and actually Zac and Andy all know this. Well, we were on the same team together, but if you look at the size, so look at the picture on the left, right? That's normal sized human, and that's the tool that we use to make one of our products. So just absolutely massive. And then obviously the middle picture is we're lifting it into the press, and then it's in there. So just to give an idea of some of the stuff that's involved to make a robot. So that's me. And yeah, just I'll leave you with kind of a key takeaway here is that there is all different types of skills that we have at iRobot, and every single person and their strengths or talents are needed in order to make sure that we make all the robots that we do and work on all the cool stuff that we do. So with that, I think I'll turn it back over to Arjun.
Cool. Thank you so much for the brief presentation. And we've had a lot of different questions from the audience. So I'm going to ask, well, my first question is from our producer, which is for Mr. Mullinax, is do you do battle bots?
I have not been on the TV show. Working on a design for if season 6 happens, I plan to apply with, but so season 5 just got the green light yesterday, so we'll see. Maybe someday. That hopefully.
Okay, cool. So another question we've had is, how do the Roombas handle stairs?
Okay, I guess I can answer that question. So the Roombas have what we call cliff detectors on the bottom of the robots. They're little IR emitters and receivers. Oh, maybe you can see there. I think Mike is holding it up, so you can see there's the little clear plastic pieces. Yeah. And so this is roughly used to sense depth. So if the robot drives up over to the edge of the top of the stairs, it will no longer get the reflection back from the IR emitter, and will know that there's a cliff there, and so the robot will back up and change its behavior to avoid driving over the stairs.
Cool. So one of the questions I've had personally is, especially with young kids, they're going to see the Roomba, they're going to be like, I need to bump into it. How does the Roomba tell apart just from a little kid like hitting the Roomba versus it bumping into a wall, and how does it always know where it is when that type of thing happens?
All right. So there's two parts to the question. One is, how does it know where it is when it so how does it know where it is in general and also after a bump? And then the second thing is, how does it tell the difference between a wall and a child or some other moving objects? So to know where it is, the robot, all of our robots have some form of like mapping technology. So some of them which have cameras can detect landmarks, so little unique things throughout the home that it can recognize from a different angle and uses those to build a map. So this is a pretty common technology. So it's called SLAM is the acronym. So simultaneous localization and mapping. So the robot is simultaneously mapping its new space and then also figuring out where it is within its map. And we don't just use the camera, the robot uses other sensors as well to fuse together to get a more accurate location of where it is. And in terms of figuring out if you've bumped into a wall or a mobile object, that's mostly related to the robot's behavior. So if the robot bumps into an obstacle, it might not know whether it's the wall or whether it's a person that's walking away. But the next time when it comes to the same spot, it's going to slow down and very gently sort of probe and see if it's there or not. And if the person has moved, then it will not have a bump detected at that location. And so it can update its internal representation of the house to say, oh, I thought there was a wall there, but there's actually not a wall there. And so in that way, it's constantly evolving its own representation of the space that it's in.
Cool. So another question we've had, which is, let me just check. How good are the robots at building like the custom robots? Because I'm assuming the audience member is assumes that a lot of the assembly and fabrication is automated. So how good is it? How good is the automation at doing it versus how much do you have to do by hand from humans?
Yeah, there's we try to have as much automation as possible, and that's for a couple reasons. Mainly because robots are a lot better at not making mistakes than humans, right? So it lets us have a better quality product out the other side. How good are they? Just to use a number, like one of the key metrics that we use when we're manufacturing robots is called yield, which basically is how many good robots the production line yielded. So it's typical. Our target is above 98%. So, and that's pretty typical for all of our lines. And so, yeah, there's tasks when you build a robot that can be automated. For example, we have a lot of screwing robots that, automatically feed a screw and then can drive it in and hold together two pieces of plastic. That's very common. The other really common type of automation that we have is visual inspection, right? So you bring the robot into a test station, you locate it, and then you scan it with a bunch of cameras and sensors to make sure that either we didn't damage something, that it's not scratched, that all the parts are there. So that's another kind of example. But there are still tasks that that need to be done by a human. So like, for example, wiring harnesses, right? Like that's a really tough task for a robot to do repeatedly. So for us anyways, that's an example of a assembly step that is commonly still done by hand. So yeah.
Cool. So our next question is, can robots like these be used in hazardous areas such as like nuclear plants?
Yeah, I think you got it.
Yeah, so certainly not the environment that a Roomba is designed for, but a number of years ago during the Fukushima disaster in Japan, we actually had a team working directly with the Japanese power company to actually develop a very quick solution to get some of our defense robots that Matt spoke about earlier to get into the reactor to help shut it down. And there was some really incredible robots working on robots, stuff that was going on during that time. So the main robot that was going into the reactor to help decommission stuff was so radioactive that you couldn't really have a person come up to it to change out the batteries between missions. So what was actually happening was there was somebody who was using another robot to change the batteries in the other robot completely remotely to keep people safe. And I don't know if anybody on this team worked directly in that effort or knows more details, but it is certainly something that robots are fantastic for.
Do you have anything else to add to that question, or should I move on to the next one?
No, I don't think any of us directly worked on it. I know a lot of people who did, and so you can imagine in disaster relief efforts, there's a very short time frame, shorter than most build seasons and stuff like that, where you want to be able to get something to be helpful, but as quick as possible. So there's that high stakes balancing game of trying to produce not just the best thing, but the most practical thing in the given time frame. So there were a lot of late nights, and I think the robot was out the door in a week or two. It was very, very quick and very, a lot of people pitched in a lot of late nights to get that up and running.
I think maybe another interesting bit from iRobot's history that, you know, I wasn't around for, but have heard legend of, right? So like, if you think back to like the old, like the original Roomba, the way that it gets around your room is, you know, we call it random bounce, right? So it'll move forward and then wait till the bumper hits something, and then it'll turn and keep going. There's actually, I'm not doing a good job to describe. There's a lot more math behind making sure that algorithm will hit. You'll get full coverage of the area, and that navigation technology came from actually minesweeping robots that iRobot did some work on. I don't think any of them actually made it out into the field necessarily, but the technique for navigating and covering an area is what then made it into to the first Roomba. So
cool. So the next question is, what happens if you move the dock for like the Roomba?
It will find the new location of the dock, is what it will do. Yeah, the robot keeps track during, we call it a mission, when the robot is sent out to go and clean the whole space. And so when it's going out on its mission, it's looking, always paying attention to see if it's seen a dock as it's been going, so that when the mission is over, or when the robot detects that its battery is low and needs to go back and recharge, it already has some memory of where the dock is. And so if you were to move it, it would be confused at first. What it would do is it would drive towards where it last saw a dock. And if you had sneakily hidden the dock somewhere else, it would look around locally and be like, uh-oh, I don't see a dock. And then it would continue to clean until it saw a dock again. And if by going all the way around the edge of your space and it still didn't see a dock, it would give up and stop and send you an alert on your phone if you have it connected to your app. So it's pretty dynamic. It will try really hard to find the dock, but it's true that most of our users do set the dock and leave it in the same place. And that's certainly something that the robot can handle, but it will try its best to get to the dock, even if you are a little malicious about it.
So you mentioned earlier in the presentation that like multiple of the robots will communicate with each other, like the Roomba and the mopping robot. How do they communicate?
Matt, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So it's all of our connected robots are connected via the cloud, right? So they all go talk to some Amazon server somewhere, and then so that's how they're all connected to your home's Wi-Fi, and then we kind of integrate all that information in the cloud, and then we're able to kind of coordinate how each robot will react and when it will go off and start a mission in that case.
Yeah, the other thing is for the robots that are creating maps using the camera, they can share that map information. So if one robot, like your vacuuming robot, has already mapped out the space, then when you want to run your mopping robot, it doesn't need to build a new map. It can use the same map. and they can communicate back and forth information. For example, if there's some hazardous area that you don't want the robot to go, you don't have to tell each robot individually. That's information that can be communicated back and forth. But yeah, I think Matt's right. It's all done through the cloud, and they don't directly connect to each other. But that way you have one central storage of all the information around how the user wants to be cleaning that particular house.
Okay, so next question is, can the iRobot, any of the robots from iRobot, clean stairs? And can they identify roach or pest infested areas? Can they can they clean those?
So they can clean stairs if you pick them up and put them on the stairs one at a time. Yeah, the same technology that keeps the robot from driving off of a cliff's edge, so from driving down the stairs, will keep it on a single level. So if you were to put it on one stair, it will try very hard to clean that one stair without driving off. But for the most part, no, we're not. The Roomba probably is not well designed to handle stair cleaning by itself.
This is like a classic iRobot intern project. So if anybody on the call ever decides to intern at iRobot, you will work on a stair cleaning robot for us and see if you're more successful than interns past.
Yes, stair climbing, stair cleaning.
Yeah.
For the roach infestation, that's an interesting idea. I mean, one of the things we are exploring are other things that the robot can be doing, since it is traveling around in your home. If there's other pertinent information that can be communicated to the user about the state of the home, that is something that we're actively working on.
Yeah, I think that's probably a little more in-depth problem than, hey, there is a mess here, because infestation problems are typically not right in the middle of your floor and might need some more sensors to maybe inside of the vacuum to see, okay, what kind of particulates are we pulling up and things of that nature. But that's definitely an interesting problem that we have a lot of curious minds at iRobot who will hear a problem like that and go, how do we actually make that work? And then one thing leads to another, and somebody has some sort of prototype for something on their desk.
What are modular design? How modular are the designing and building strategies you follow?
That's a really good question. I'll tackle this from historical perspective. There's a strong desire to have a modular-based design approach just for the sake of serviceability. So it's easy to replace or repair a robot if you were only replacing a module rather than trying to replace an integrated component. But it also makes people like Matt's job a lot easier when you can reuse modules across different robots, across different platforms and products. So I think when we're designing robots, it's strongly desired to be as modular as possible, or as much as it makes sense, balanced with the added cost of material and parts that go along with it. So I think in short, it's definitely a design element that we try to incorporate as much as possible, and are relatively successful in doing so, I would say.
Yeah, it's a good, Andy kind of touched on it, but that's a good, at the end of the day, iRobot is a company and we need to make money, right? And so having designs that are modular is a great way to help us make money so that we can continue to mess around with stair climbing robots and all those kind of fun things, right? Because it allows us to reuse it across products, like Andy said, and then that means that you make more of them, and when you make more of something, there's a good chance that you just made it cheaper. Yeah.
How do you avoid privacy and security issues when you're working with cloud communication?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and something that that comes up a lot in machine learning, where you do want to learn models across potentially sensitive information. So we do almost all of the processing is done on the robot, So even like all of the mapping that I talked about, that's happening on the integrated chips, the controllers on the robot. And then what's being sent up, users have the choice if they want to connect the robot to the cloud or not. If you don't connect it to the cloud, it will still work. It will still vacuum. It will still do exactly what it's supposed to do. But then what you won't get is you won't get to see like a visual map of where the robot went, because the robot has no way of communicating that without sending that information. And so that's one way that we help protect privacy, is by doing a lot of the processing on the robot itself. Another way is just making sure that the user is very, like our consumers are well informed about any data that the robot is sending up. So they have options for whether they want to opt in or opt out of any particular new features that we're exploring.
Okay. So next question is, how many people does it take to make a robot?
Great question. It depends on what kind of robot you want to get out. So a lot of our robots will start with maybe an exploratory team to help. There's a tremendous amount of risk in making a completely new product. So as a company, we would like to try to mitigate that risk as much as possible. And we'll have a small group of engineers come together and look at what are our highest risk elements and how do we minimize those risks as much as possible. So they'll lay down a lot of the groundwork to actually start making the robot early, and then typically more people will be added onto the project because typically more people help speed up the process. I think, so we haven't touched on Terra a lot, which is the primary team that I was on. That was our lawn mowing robot that is delayed now, but we're looking at solutions for the future. But anyway, that team was what, 56 people, somewhere in there, when COVID hit. Other teams can be anywhere ranging from, that number to what are the new E series?
Yeah, I think like in general, like the team sizes would range anywhere from like the 15 to 20 all the way up to 50 that are working directly and only on that product. But it's a little bit of a tough question to answer because, I mean, there's probably, we have 1,200 employees and every single employee is working on one or more robots and contributing in some way. Like, I mean,
right.
Honestly, that's, we all play some little part or some little or large part in basically every product that gets out there. So
yeah, no, absolutely. That like 55-ish number, that's like just the engineers working on it. There's right, like all of the logistical staff, all of our like finance and our legal department, which manages, we come up with a lot of really cool ideas, and so we patent those ideas. And we have our legal team to help defend those patents and the intellectual property of our employees and things like that. There is a tremendous amount of support from everywhere. So putting a hard number on any project gets increasingly difficult.
Yeah, it's a thing that I've found interesting, working with various teams at iRobot is, thinking about, we have graphic designers on staff that you'd think, why does a robotics company have graphic designers on staff, that they're making hardware robots? Can't the engineers do that? But then you think about, there's the illustrations that go into the manual. There's the design of the box and the packaging. There's all of the graphics in the app. So it's really to go from an idea that somebody has for a product all the way out through something that's in the end, that a customer's using, is pretty much everyone in the company has some part that they touch, which is really cool.
Well, I have two more questions and then we're gonna call it time. So second to last question is, how do you dispose of a non-functional robot? Like, are the parts reused and recycled, or do they get just thrown away?
I could take that question. So fortunately for us, at headquarters, at least up in Bedford, Massachusetts, there's a kind of an intermediary trash for robots where parts and components are harvested by people around the office for projects, personal projects, work projects, before they go to permanent disposal, we'll call it. So there's a bunch of random robots and robot parts always floating around the office. And like I said in my presentation, so often we reuse those parts as either building blocks early on in a development phase of another project, or in its entirety if we can reuse them completely and totally. So I think there's a good amount of reuse and reusability that we definitely seek to attain with all of our parts before they go to permanent scrap. I don't know, Matt, if you've got more insight on the operations side.
No, I think you covered it pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that in the past, there has been a good amount of robots that would have gone to disposal that have found new homes at interns, apartments, or living conditions. There are many, many robots that have gone home with interns. Just because, like, I remember when I got hired, we were told this story of, there was one pernicious intern who like would literally scavenge like every single day. And finally they were like, hey, why are you taking so many robots? And he's like, I'm going to make the best Roomba that there's ever been. And they're like, all right, more power to you. That's awesome. Tell us all about it.
Okay, and our last question is, are there people from iRobot who would be able to remote mentor FTC or FRC teams, and how would teams go about this if it's possible?
I would say yes.
I think it definitely is a potential. I would encourage you to reach out to the contact that I hooked us up with you guys. If you need her email, shoot me a note and I'll happy to provide that with you.
Yeah. I'm betting there already are. I know a good amount of like FRC and FTC mentors that work for us. I don't know how they've been handling this more remote situation that we're in now, but yeah, I would say that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I think also maybe another resource is you can go to iRobot.com and there's a STEM outreach section and there's all kinds of contact info on there too.
Yeah, that's probably the best place. Good point.
Yeah.
I'm afraid we've run out of time for this presentation. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience? Okay, so our audience, do you have anything else to say?
No, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. To our audience, if you have any more questions regarding the presentation, send them to us at wizards.exe@gmail.com, which is in the description, and we'll forward them to iRobot. ConnectCon continues this afternoon at 2 p.m. with Mr. Alan Nuttall, who's a former engineer at Uber Advanced Technologies and is giving us a virtual tour. If you'd like to be informed about more events and videos by our team, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Wizards.exe FTC 9794. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and check out our website. Thank you so much to iRobot for presenting at ConnectCon. Thank you to all of our audience for being so attentive and just attending the presentation today. Also, thank you to our alumni, Sarthak Bhatnagar, Angeline Zhang, and Ishan Oberoi for their help. See you this afternoon.